We are live. We are back. Lions Collective. Jeff Eifredi, your host. I'm joined by Detroit Football Network Zone, Justin Rogers. We got the Athletics, Colton Pouncey. 97.1 The Ticket Zone, Will Birchfield. In a new environment, by the way. It's completely new.
Number 7 on the season. For those curious who are watching at home, I am inside a pod studio at the Fox 2 stations. We're recording our bi-week pregame show tonight, so I'm taping from here. And back in my early TV days, when I was a mere neophyte in this profession, just a simple grasshopper beneath these bright lights, during COVID, we had to record remotely. We couldn't come into contact with each other on TV. So we recorded in these pods, and I'm back in one tonight. So, hey, pleasure to be here, fellas.
Wow. Good to have you here, man.
Yeah, leave a comment on below the stream afterwards. Like, where do you think Will streams from next week? We're gonna
just give him a place and he'll show up there.
Yeah, if you guys have like a spare room at home, I'll come through.
Oh yeah, don't get now. Watch these comments now. Watch. Yeah, fellas, it's good to talk to you, man. You get the bye week this week. Lions are coming off a Monday night win against the Tampa Bay Bucs, which, you know, going into the game, the storyline was this injured secondary for the Lions facing this injured, before injured wide receiver core for the Bucs. And then they had Mike Evans and Ibuka play, which Mike Evans ended up leaving the game because of an injury, which he's out for the year now. That was the storyline going into it. The Bucs were the number one team in the NFC record-wise. It was a matchup of the ages for people. And then they, offensively, didn't look the prettiest. Obviously, defensively, they played. I think Amon-Ra talked about it in his podcast. He said it might be the first or second best defensive performance I've ever seen with this Lions team to date. With Calvin Shepard, it's been a pretty consistent thing. Calvin's doing a great job. What's kind of some of your guys' takeaways off that performance? It wasn't pretty, but they still won by 2 scores.
Look, I love the way that secondary played, but my big takeaway is Aleem McNeil is a massive, massive boost to this defense. Comes out, first pass, and he's just driving the center into Baker Mayfield's lap, leads to a sack for Jack Campbell. And that's what it's going to be. Like, it's not going to be big stats for the defensive tackle. It's going to be creating for everybody else. And 5 pressures, which is more pressures than DJ Reader, Tyleik Williams, Roy Lopez had all season in one game. He walks in, first game off ACL, and drops that, in Baker's lap, essentially. We saw him push back guards. We saw him split double teams. It was very similar to with Aiden coming back from injury. Like, there was just no rust whatsoever. And I think that kind of morphs this defense and takes it to another level.
Yeah, I thought it was a really sound game plan for Calvin Shepard against the Bucs, and we kind of talked about it a little bit last week. Baker Mayfield is really good against zone coverage. I think he was 3rd in the NFL in EPA per dropback entering Week 7 against zone coverage, and 15th against man. So guess what the Lions did? They played a lot of man. Now you didn't exactly know how it was going to go without their 2 starters, and obviously Rock and Amik are pretty solid out there, but you never know. When they announced that Evans and Ibuka were going to play, you're like, all right, this could be a little ugly here. But I really thought those guys held their own. Rock, Amik, and even Whiteside, who was out there. So Lions played man coverage 43.1% of their defensive snaps versus the Bucs. That was the 3rd highest rate in Week 7. Baker's EPA per dropback versus man in Week 7 ranked 27th out of 33 qualified quarterbacks. So really, they played into their strengths against a Bucs team that has some weaknesses against man. And obviously Evans goes down. That doesn't help. But when you combine corners that can hold their own on the outside with the pass rush and what we saw from those guys up front, and as Justin mentioned, the return of Aleem was such a big boost. The Lions had a pressure rate of 51.9%. That was the highest in Week 7. That was the 10th highest by a team this season. Yeah. They didn't rely on the blitz to do it. Their blitz rate of 22.2%, I think that was 16th, so around middle of the pack. So credit to those guys up front. I mean, it's funny because you talk to Campbell and you're like, man, the secondary had such a great performance. Like, what do you think? And he's like, I mean, it was kind of a group effort. He didn't really want to go there. It's kind of funny. He got asked that a couple of times. He wasn't really helping our stories there with the narrative. But in terms of this collective effort, I thought it was a great performance. And I mean, hats tip to Calvin Shepard, those secondary, the guys that were filling in secondary, and then the guys up front.
Colton, really important question. I mean, that's a good pass rush win rate and everything, but are they going to trade for Max Crosby? I don't know if you've been asked lately.
I feel like they're good. I've heard that
Trey
Hendrickson.
That's what we're doing there.
That's going to be the new viral quote. No, we're good. They're good. Golden Bouncy. This game on Monday night reminded me, and I think several others, of their win over the Vikings in the season finale last year. Not just prime time, not just the black jerseys, but a decimated defense that was coming up with plays from unheralded and unlikely heroes, and an opposing quarterback that missed a few throws that could have dynamically and dramatically changed the game, and then an offense that leaned really heavily on its most talented, most explosive player, and that was Jameson Gibbs. He scored, I think, 4 touchdowns in that Vikings win last year. He had a career high in yards from scrimmage on Monday night. He was the player that Bucs defense could not contain, especially when it needed to most, when they had cut it to a 1-score game early in the second half. And then if you go back to that Vikings game again, it was the return of Anzalone that sparked the defense that night. And in this case, it was the return of Alim McNeill that sparked and refortified the front seven. And I feel like we're watching this front seven reach a level that I don't even know that some of us knew they could reach this season. And it seems to be a different defensive end opposite Hutch, who kind of asserts himself each week. And it was Lacey for a minute, and it was Muhammad again last week, who had, I think, 9 pressures on the other side of Hutch. And if you start looking at, and we can get into it more later, but if you start looking at pass rush win rates and pressures and PFF grades, like, the Lions do statistically have 2 top 20 defensive ends. And it seems like in the collective of Muhammad and Lacey and others, they have kind of answered that question of who's going to rush the passer and set an edge opposite Hutch without Marcus Davenport. So this front seven with Alim McNeill, I think in the second half, health willing, of course, is poised to do some major damage to opposing offenses.
And the funny thing is, they're still going to get back Davenport and presumably Pascal at some point. So there is depth and reinforcements coming to a group that is already playing pretty well. I did want to go back to your point really quickly about man coverage versus zone coverage, Colton. I'm curious, I don't know if you could even pull it up, but first half numbers, our first 3-quarter numbers, because most of their zone was when they were up 14. And they were, I don't want to say playing prevent, but they were trying to keep everything in front of them and making sure they weren't getting burned deep. So I would bet the man coverage rate was even higher when the game was more in question.
Yeah, for sure. I could probably look that up in the episode. But yeah, I mean, I really think they were just playing to their strengths. And, you talk to players after the game and they're praising Kelvin Shepard and, calling him a guru and all this stuff, which I think is kind of funny. Shep would appreciate that, I'm sure. But he's been awesome so far to start the season. It feels like he tailors each game plan specifically for not only the opponent, but what his guys do well against that opponent. So yeah, I think he's been really great at that.
And I think it bothered him and the rest of that coaching staff that they did stray from their identity in their loss to the Chiefs. And they deployed a lot of zone coverage in that game, and Mahomes picked it apart. And there were gaps in that coverage all night long. And I think they just recentered themselves and got back to who they are. And as much as man coverage reflects their personnel, it also reflects their personality. And you could feel that shine through on Monday night. And that is who they have molded themselves to be for several years now. And I think Shepard and the rest of the staff knew that it was time to re-announce themselves as such.
I think the most impressive part of that was just the safeties, the way the safeties played within that man scheme, right? They play a lot of cover one with that second safety being a rover. And, those guys had 10 combined snaps going into that game, this season, and Hallett 0 for his career, his 3-year career. And just both of them really kind of had a feel for the nuances of the position, where they needed to be positioning wise to help out their guys. There was a lot of bracket coverages on Evans when he was in the game, Egbuka when, he was a primary target on third down. I just thought Thomas Harper and Eric Hallett played unbelievably well within those man principles.
Justin, by the way, I just looked it up. Through the first 3 quarters, the Lions played 48.6% man coverage.
And what was it for the game?
45.5.
Okay, so a little bit more zone.
Yeah, I think a player to highlight too. I mean, Nick Whiteside.
I was about to mention him.
Yeah, Nick Whiteside, the SVSU alum, also from Auburn Hills. He was matched up with Emeka Egbuka on 4 different targets. 0 receptions allowed, 3 pass breakups. One of them prevented a touchdown, which he was beat, but he recovered nicely. He's a guy that I think, and I got to give this Lions regime a ton of credit, because I think you see a lot of regimes will look locally for players, and you might think, well, they're looking at their own backyard. But it seems like Brad Holmes, when he does it, he's not just looking in his own backyard. He's actually finding good players that are in Michigan. Nick Whiteside, obviously, they just drafted Isaac Tesla, and he's done it in the past. And this is a guy who grew up a Lions fan. Trevor Nowaski, another one, SVSU. They both went to SVSU together. And to see Nick Whiteside come out and play like that, coming off, basically off the bench as well after Rock Ya-Sin went down, this is someone that, like, I don't know where. I mean, the next man up thing is a saying in the NFL, but you're actually seeing it on full display with a guy like Nick Whiteside, and he's a player that, like, I don't know how you handle him moving forward, because if he goes back on the practice squad, this guy, I mean, after that performance on primetime, there's no way that some other team does not just poach this man right away. I think he got himself a job playing the way he played. He played his ass off. So a ton of credit to Nick Whiteside, man. Local guy too. That was huge.
I remember standing next to both Will and Colton at different stretches during training camp, just watching Whiteside break up pass after pass after pass. And we're like, is this guy good, or is Tim Patrick washed? Like, I cannot tell what is going on here. And then he had a pretty good practice against the Dolphins. I remember the Dolphins were going, like, look, gets down to final cuts, I'm going to write about why the Dolphins should claim this kid. And
bro, you and I had good practices against the Dolphins.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Yeah, go on.
But like, it was interesting because not only did he not make the roster, he didn't make the practice squad, right? And I think a lot of that had to do with the preseason performances. It just didn't port from the practice field of the game. He got burned pretty badly multiple times. And so I was surprised to see the Lions call his number in this game, especially when you have Trey Flowers on the bench, a much more experienced veteran. I thought they were going to go the Arthur Mollett route, go with the experienced guy. Whiteside comes in, first play, makes a pretty good run stop. But I think the thing I really, really loved about the performance is he has 4 pass breakups, right? He gets credit for 3. The 4th comes on a 2-point conversion immediately after he gives up a touchdown. So he has this, short-term memory that's so important to the position. But on the 3 in regulation, the 2 in the red zone, all 3 of those plays, he's beat. He has given up separation. His ability to turn his head on all 3 of those in conjunction with when the receiver turns his head to find the ball, locate the ball, and tip it away was incredibly impressive. I know we talk about that trait with DBs all the time, and I think it's a little overrated, but he was able to do it and use his length, because he's a pretty big dude for a corner. It was incredibly impressive, and I think, it's got to be a really big confidence boost for him.
Yeah, in this secondary of replacements, as some people call them, of unlikely heroes, as I've called them, the Legion of Whom, as others have called them, Nick Whiteside wasn't even supposed to be a factor. He entered this game on the bench. And as you referenced, Jeff, it wasn't until Rock Ya-Sin was injured early in the second half that he gets thrust into the fire. And yeah, J-Raj, I'll echo what you said. The first play that he's in there, he prevents a potentially explosive run for Rachaad White. He made a really important tackle to shut that run down, which only went for 4 or 5 yards. Felt like without him closing there, it could have gone for 10 plus, 15 plus. And then later in that drive, look, he got completely washed out and taken out by an offensive tackle on that screen touchdown to Tez Johnson. And he was like, look, I took full responsibility for that. That's on me. But he turns around and he is on K. Dotton's hip on the 2-point conversion. He knocks that pass down. And when I asked him afterwards, like, when could you sense that this was your moment? When could you sense that this was your night? That's the play he pointed to, because he said when he starts getting his hands on balls, he senses that he has the comfort to play against the guys he's covering. He has the confidence to stay with them. And it just shined more and more as the game went on. I see you, J-Raj. I thought about saying it myself. It shined more and more as the game went on. And 2 touchdowns that he prevented. And I agree. Maybe the most impressive pass breakup he had was down the sideline against Ibuka, because he only got like maybe a fingernail on that ball, but he got his head around at the last second when he needed to. And if he doesn't make that slight deflection, Ibuka might not be housing that ball, but he's catching it and exploding for probably a 30, 40-yard gain. He was Whiteside was like white on rice with those receivers on Monday night, and it was incredibly impressive. That's a guy that couldn't even crack this team's practice squad when they made their final cuts out of camp. And he said that was hard to hear, but he also realized that he had joined camp, a week into it. they realized and he realized that he was really just a camp body to help the team get through some injuries early on in camp. And they told him, look, we might need you later on down the line. And he was deeply, deeply grateful when they called and brought him back in this month. And then he gets the call, a little bit special teams role against the Chiefs, and then obviously thrust into the fire against the Bucs on prime time, and did everything to warrant more opportunities going forward. And it really is incredible that both he and Trevor Nowaski, who grew up Lions fans, are now playing for this team out of Division II Saginaw Valley State. And he's someone that was just a Lions fan 10 years ago that loved Darius Slay. He said, and then after Slay left, it was Quandre Diggs. And as someone pointed out to me a couple of days ago, when the Lions and Steelers play later this season, I hope that Whiteside plays, and I hope that he can do a jersey swap with Darius Slay after the game, because it would kind of bring this story full circle in a really gratifying way for Nick Whiteside. But I thought he was the star of this game, and I was a little bit shocked when Dan gave out 3 game balls in the locker room post game and did not give one to Whiteside. But it sounds like he corrected that on Monday and gave one to all of those guys who stepped up in a big way on Monday night from that cast of the Legion of Whom. But, over the course of an NFL season, you have to have stories like this to maintain your place as an elite team, to find ways to win. Credit to Nick Whiteside for seizing his moment.
Yeah, I would not give out a game ball to Dan Campbell for his ability to give out game balls. Yeah. This game. I was a couple of those. I was like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But just going back what you said about Whiteside, it's so cool how these stories work out, and it feels like it happens more with this team than others. And I know I covered this team, but they just keep guys around. They tell them, hey, we're going to need you at some point, so keep your phone on you. And the way it works out at any point during a season is really cool. The way it comes together. And I thought Kelvin Shepard said it best last week. He said he told these guys it's time to introduce yourself not only to the Detroit community but the NFL community. And he talked about, the overnight stories, these overnight celebrities. He said it's not overnight. It's just that was the night they got introduced to the world. And for Nick Whiteside, this was really a great moment for him playing for his hometown team. I thought that was really cool. And honestly, when you look at some of these guys that they signed, they do have a level of trust there. And he was a guy that knew the system and was around. And that's Dan Campbell said it this week. That's why they put him out there. But I think in a game like this, you needed that trust. And it's also, you don't have to be a hero, right? Just make the plays when they come your way. You're going to have help. And the way the pass rush worked, if you look at some of those pass breakups, the rush was almost home on Baker. It's right in his face. He has to force the ball out early. Whiteside's there to bat it away or make a play. And that's really how this night kind of went. It was a rush and coverage working together. You had the guys on the back end that, they're not the all-pro safeties. They're not the shutdown corners, but they did their job, and they did just enough with the help around them. And to see it come together in a way like it did on Monday Night Football was really cool. I think Troy Aikman said on the broadcast that was one of the best defensive performances he's ever seen. I thought that was high praise, given what the Lions were up against.
Yeah,
I like that you.
Go ahead.
I like you left the part of Shep's speech out that was more funny than what you said, where he's like, I try to tell him it's not that big of a moment, but this might be your one shot. This might be the only way you ever feed your family. No pressure. I think that's the part that resonated with the Whiteside, is that he was worried he would never be able to feed his family if he didn't break up those passes.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but if you want to feed your kids and stuff, you might want to play well on Monday night. Just saying. Yeah. I asked Nick afterwards what his favorite play was of the 4 pass breakups he had, including the one on the 2-point conversion. And he thought about it for a while, and he first, in kind of a meek fashion, lamented the fact that he didn't have a pick. I wanted to be like, dude, you just had the most epic night of all time. Just tell me your favorite play of those 4. But he really does consider himself a ball guy. He was a receiver like most DBs were in his high school days, even entering college. So he was a little bit peeved that he didn't come down with a pick. I think especially on the 4th down play, when a pick would have served the same purpose as a pass breakup. But he eventually said that was his favorite play, because that was the play that really finished off the game. And at that point, even though the Bucs were kind of just banging their heads against the wall trying to get into the end zone, if they had found a way, that becomes a very interesting final 4 minutes there. That would have made it a 1-score game. They had timeouts left, and the Lions, who really hadn't moved the ball at all without Gibbs, would have had to find a way to extend the game. So he said, look, I want to be a finisher. And he felt like in that moment he helped finish the game. And he has parents in the crowd. And just to give you an idea of how much of an unknown he still is, and how he has yet to establish himself in the NFL. When I asked him if he had anyone else come to the game, he was like, well, I was going to get tickets for a bunch of other friends and family, but they were so expensive that they were like, dude, don't pay for those. And like, that's the reality for a guy who's still making, practice squad money for the most part. So like you said, Jeff, it probably won't be long that he stays there. But this is exactly what Kelvin Shepard was talking about. Guys having an opportunity and making the absolute most of it.
Lions players getting priced out of Ford Field is crazy.
Right? Yeah.
Crazy. Kind of the times, I guess.
Yeah.
They had to buy those branch jerseys. They had no money left.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a terrific story. My co-host went to SVSU with him and Trevor, and he used to say that he was coaching the basketball team, but when they would go into the gym at night, weekends, weekdays, Nick Whiteside would be in that gym by himself working out. Like, it really just shows, and it fits kind of what the Lions are about. Like, that guy's an absolute. So I'm happy for him. It's a great story behind him. I do want to ask, because this is a question I've been getting asked, and you guys are the perfect people to ask this question to before we move on just with the defense. What has been the biggest difference to you guys? And it's not about throwing shade or anything, but between Aaron Glenn and Kelvin Shepard. I think that's like every time we watch a good defensive performance, all my comment section is always bringing up Aaron Glenn, always trying to either put him down and whatever. And I know that it's probably an easy time to put him down because the Jets are still winless. But what has been the biggest difference you guys have noticed just from the transition from Aaron Glenn and then Kelvin, who was under Aaron Glenn, but seems to kind of have his own identity with these players in defense?
I wrote about this, I don't know, maybe a week ago. I went around the locker room, and what started as kind of an anonymous poll piece of just trying to get guys' thoughts off the record, developed into me sitting down with Kelvin. So he's handed the keys over to the players a lot more this year, and that is by far the biggest difference. It's very schematically similar. They're doing a lot of the cover one, mixing in the zone, the pressure packages, the third down blitzes. Like, a lot of that is the same. What he's done is he's given the linebackers and the safeties ability to kind of check and adjust plays based on what they're seeing in game. And it's very similar to Goff having 2 play calls at the line of scrimmage, right? And being able to adjust based on what he sees. And so he doesn't want the defense handicapped because he gave them a bad call and then some kind of late shift or motion changes the picture. He wants Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone and Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch to be able to adjust those calls. And so when you see them, flashing all these hand signals and, flapping their arms or doing the locomotive thing, like that's them adjusting the coverages. Most of it is adjustment to the coverages, but Aaron Glenn had the defense kind of humming before the injury started last year, before Aiden Hutchinson went down. I think it was
there's
already
your biggest difference.
Yeah, like it was already trending in a good way, but to hand more power to the players, it's kind of a Dan Campbell trickle down, back to when they had them run the practice on Hard Knocks, right? Like, that's always what they try to get, is the players to buy in and feel like it's their property. Shepard is making that actionable on defense right now, and I think it's showing up.
Yeah, that I remember, I think our very first episode of this podcast, I referenced something along those lines after having a conversation with Anzalone after one of like the earlier practices in camp where he was back on the field. And that was exactly what he noted, J-Raj, was that with AG, as aggressive and attacking as that defense was, it was pretty rigid in its play calls. And when the play call came in, it was operated and executed exactly as it was called and as it was designed. Whereas with Shep, he said, we have more freedom, more flexibility to change those calls as we see fit based on whatever the offense might be showing, which gives the players a feeling of more control. And then all you really want on the field is to feel like you control the outcome of this play. And it feels like the players and linebackers especially sense that more than ever playing for Kelvin Shepard. And beyond having Hutch healthy, another big difference for this defense, which is linebacker centric, is that Jack Campbell is now one of the 5 best linebackers in the NFL. It feels like he has taken a leap into the elite at his position. And just to be fair, like he had yet to take that step under AG. He was getting close last year, but Kelvin Shepard, and this is not at all to undermine what he's done, but has the benefit of unleashing a Jack Campbell who can now patrol the defense like he never could before, and he really is the captain of that unit.
Yeah, for me, it's a couple things, and a lot of what both of those guys just said. I'll take it a step further. I just think the communication between this defense is miles ahead of what it's been in past years. I think a lot of that has to do with Jack, and he's wearing the green dot this year. He's getting everyone on the right page, and those guys trust him to get them into the right call, out of bad looks. And that freedom, you can really see it on the field with these guys. And the hand signals, as Justin mentioned, you see that all the time. You're just like, wonder what that means. All of a sudden, a guy's blitzing. It's like, all right, cool. So it's really fun to watch just from above in the press box where we sit. I'll add something else. I was kind of digging into some numbers for a story later this week, just looking at some of the pressure numbers. I didn't want to compare it to last year because obviously Hutch only played 5 games, was around for 6 weeks. So I did take a look at just the first 7 games this year and the time that Hutch played last year, just for a look at the pass rush and the pressure rates and things like that. So far this year, the Lions have recorded a pressure rate of 38.8%, and that's 12th in the NFL. They've done that while blitzing 23.5% of dropbacks, and that's 18th. So last year from weeks 1 to 6, they were similarly ranked in pressure rate, 37.4%. That was 8th in the NFL. They blitzed 28.3%, which was 9th highest. So they've gone down from 9th to 18th, kind of in a similar range, not exactly the same, but 5 versus 7 games. The big difference, when the Lions blitzed last year, their pressure rate was below average at 38.5%. That was 22nd in the NFL. When they've blitzed so far this year, they ranked 10th in the NFL in pressure rate at 49.2%. So they're more effective when they blitz, even though they're blitzing at a lower rate. And I think a lot of that has to do with giving that command to the linebackers in that middle of the defense, the guys that they trust there to again, make those right calls, get them out of bad looks, and just be more flexible with it. Because one thing, Aaron Glenn, who I thought was a really good defensive coordinator by his final year here with the talent he finally had, he was pretty stubborn in some ways. He was stuck on his ways and was always going to play man, was always going to blitz at a high rate. Those were the staples of his defense. But I think Shep is more willing to not only tailor it game to game, but also give that pressure, give that communication to his linebackers, so to speak. So that's a little bit of the things I've looked into so far this year. Some of the big differences, but I mean, one of the biggest things also is just, having Hutch play at the level he's playing, having Al-Quadin Muhammad play at the level he's playing, having a proper running mate for him, which they told us, hey, we're good. And they've been proven right so far. So it's been a lot of fun watching those guys cook up front.
And having Derek Barnes play the way that he's playing,
yes.
I think goes a long way too. And it was easy to forget that he was supposed to play a pivotal role on this defense last year, and almost felt like his injury was obscured by all the injuries that followed, beginning with that of Hutch. But you felt his presence in a big way this past Monday, even if he got a game ball to Colton that doesn't think he deserved.
He's gonna be in trouble, man.
But that's part of their, I would imagine, their improved success rate when they're blitzing. And it's also part of the cohesion that we're seeing among those 3 linebackers. There was a play, I think it was in the maybe the Browns game, where Jack Campbell explained, I think it was Anzalone was supposed to go on a blitz, and because of the way the Browns shifted protections, it made much more sense for Barnes to go from the backside. And in a span of like 2 seconds, without even communicating non-verbally, not even communicating via hand signals, the 3 of them recognized that. And I don't want to use the word telepathically, but just understood without having to say it or signal it, that they needed to change that pressure, that Anzalone should drop, that Barnes should go. And it ended up being just like a run blitz, and they stopped it for like a 2-yard loss. But on the sidelines afterwards, they sat down and Campbell asked Barnes and Anzo, like, hey, how did you know to drop here? How'd you know to go? And they all just had the exact same comprehension and perception of the play. And it was like this moment where they all realized we really are seeing the game the same way. And they're also seeing the game the same way as Shep. And that can't be underrated itself. Like, he's got 2 linebackers and now with Derek Barnes, probably 3, who just perceive the game the exact same way that he does. And that's why I think he's enjoyed this defense so much and calling it through the lens of those linebackers.
Hey, I want to add a layer to your blitz stuff, Colton. I think it's interesting because Kelvin Shepard spent a lot of time in the office of Ben Johnson the last couple of years. I don't know how much people realize, like, he was trying to see defense through the offense's eyes, and who better to see it through than Ben Johnson was running a top 5 offense for 3 years. And Johnson's core philosophy was make everything different look the same, make everything the same look different. And Shepard, you hear him talking about how he blitzes, and he uses the same language. I don't think it's coincidental. I think that it's really important on how they disguise the blitzes, right? Like, and that's being preached to the man, that don't tip your intention before the snap. And so now it's harder for QBs to read it. It's making them more effective. I think it really plays into those numbers you presented there a few minutes ago.
And it sounds like Jared's had a hand in that too. I think it was Shep last week who told us that Jared Goff is frequently popping into his office just to break down practice tape and to tell him where he was able to diagnose a blitz or maybe where he wasn't. And hey, call that play more often. But if you're going to call this one, just be wary of the fact that I saw this coming. And so it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration happening between now Jared Goff and Kelvin Shepard. I love it when I asked Shep how that relationship began, because Jared was one of the first guys to text Shep when he got the DC job. I believe Shep's quote was, "Real guys recognize real guys." I was like, yeah, hell yeah. But it's cool to see those two minds kind of combine to help shape this team.
Jared only started doing that when Shep became DC, by the way.
Right.
Shep made that very clear.
Yeah,
he wasn't popping in my office when I was linebackers coach.
Yeah, now I'm good enough, huh?
Yeah.
Well, before we get into the offense, we got to hear a word from one of our sponsors, Sleeper Fantasy. We'll see you guys after the quick message from our sponsors.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using the code HMA. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
All right, let's get this. There we go. We are here. Appreciate our friends over at Sleeper Fantasy for sponsoring the program. If you guys aren't using Sleeper Fantasy, what are you doing? They're one of the fastest organically growing fantasy platforms in the entire world. They have millions of active users. That's what they have, while still earning some of the highest levels of engagement per user in the industry, because at Sleeper, it's not just about sports. It's about building personal connections and lasting memories. Their latest feature, which is a lot of fun, by the way, Sleeper Picks. It's a real money product that essentially you choose the listed lines they have. You choose more or less on 2 to 8 players. You can do it pregame. You can do it live. You can do it across different sports. You just pick more or less than the predicted stats. And on Sleeper, you can get up to 1,000 XPATs. You share with your friends, get rewarded together. Use the code HMA, get a $100 deposit match up to $100. And they also have a free $20 entry separate from the code there you can use. So they're taking care of their people. So appreciate our friends over at Sleeper for sponsoring. Go check them out. Sleeper Fantasy. Fellas, this offense, I feel like this is the second game. 2 different games where we've kind of felt this way, where they win and the offense doesn't look good, but they win by like 2 scores or more. I mean, we've seen this already against like a team like Cleveland, obviously a worse team. But I think this offense, people are going to bring up, well, you had 375 total yards, whatever it was, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameer combined for like 300 of them. So they were obviously heavily dependent on those 2 players, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? They're one of the best in their position. But I think the biggest the storyline coming out of that game for people, or at least from what I've seen, has been the Jameson Williams discussion. Although Sam Laporta didn't do anything either, but he's been obviously more productive over the last couple of weeks. J-Mo coming off a 6 catch for 70 yards and a touchdown against the Chiefs. But people have kind of brought up the inconsistency, not necessarily on J-Mo, but just his involvement in this offense. And I think the biggest thing for me is John Morton doesn't have the benefit that Kelvin Shepard has, which he's been here in the building with Aaron Glenn, with these players. There's a more of a familiarity there. John was here a couple of years ago, but he's coming back after being gone. Now there's new players here, and it seems like they're still kind of figuring out some kinks, or at least trying to, which is a very tough job, by the way, involve all of these weapons which is really hard. I mean, Jared probably has, somewhere in the 20s completions a game, and you have like 7 guys you got to get involved. So it's not always going to be a consistent thing. But what was your guys' kind of takeaway from that game? And on top of that, because I know JMO posted the two memes, and people were trying to, allude to the fact that maybe he's upset, or maybe even though he's been great every time he's been asked about his lack of targets. But what has been your guys' kind of evaluation with this offense over the last 2 weeks, kind of struggling a little bit? And then JMO's involvement on top of that.
Will's our official meme decipherer. So Will, can you decipher the memes?
Yeah, I saw him early Tuesday morning, I guess it was, and wasn't all that surprised. Seemed like a guy who wishes he had a couple more catches to his name after signing a $83 million extension. And look, like it or not, I don't think this offense can continue to thrive if Jameson Williams is going to average 2.5 catches a game and 40 yards per game. And I think in some ways you saw that in the second half a little bit against the Bucs. I mean, they did a pretty good job of limiting St. Brown, maybe some more bracket coverage, of slowing down Gibbs besides the one drive early in the second half. And then things got pretty clunky on offense. And at that point, the Lions were probably content to run the ball and burn clock. But I don't think it's tenable for the offense to continue to operate without finding ways to utilize Jameson Williams more. And, John Morton talked so highly of JMO when he arrived this summer, and he was the first one to say that dude's going to have a breakout year. And I think all of us were like, well, he kind of just had one. Like, he did have 1,000 yards last year. So if a breakout on a breakout is to be expected, all of a sudden you're thinking about like a 1,200 to 1,300 yard season. And I think more than statistically, you were thinking schematically, like they're going to find ways to get JMO the ball in the intermediate, on crossers, on slants, and let him cook with the ball and in full stride. And I don't think we've seen that enough. And JMO has said everything you would want him to say in his situation, but he's had 2 or fewer catches in 5 of their 7 games this year. And I think it'll be a primary focus of John Morton's and Dan Campbell's during the bye to come up with ways to unlock him in the second half.
Spent a lot of time on this today, kind of giving away what I'm writing about tomorrow. Surprise, surprise. But I really kind of started digging into JMO in the big picture, and then I looked more closely at this game. So he's averaging about the same number of snaps, same number of routes run per game, but the Lions offense is running fewer plays this year, about 5.5 fewer plays. They're attempting fewer passes, which is a 12% decrease. It's not nothing. And so even though JMO's targets are down, they're down from like 6 to 4.5, which is close to 30%, his target share is only down less than a percentage point. And so I think it's in part, it speaks to kind of the pace of the offense, the opportunities that the entire offense has, which maybe spills over to Sam Laporta. But, one of the more interesting numbers I saw was the average depth of Williams' targets this year. And last year it was career low 11.4, which says they're getting him more involved in the short game and the intermediate game. This year it's back up to 17. And so most of the shots that are being taken to him are vertical. Then you go watch the Bucs game, and the Bucs are driving on those short crossers. They're taking them away. The 2 times where it seemed like they had something really schemed up for JMO, David Montgomery blows the block. And so it's all these little things where you say, oh, it's John Moore. No, Jared Goff's not looking his way. And it's like, maybe David Montgomery was the problem in this game that JMO didn't get the ball. It's weird like that. And so I don't, also, by the way, on the memes, I got a text. Apparently, you just had to wait too long for his Coney fries on L. George's on McNichols that night. So you just have it wrong. Bad report there. But I don't know. Yes, I agree. They've got to get him the ball more. But I think there's a lot of weird circumstantial things here that are holding him back. And look, he's not the same guy as Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like, he's not running these crisp, short intermediate routes that are super reliable that you can count on being there. Like, JMO is by default with his skill set a little bit more boom and bust. They went to him a ton in Cleveland. Didn't work out for various reasons, which we covered on a previous podcast. Went to him a ton in Kansas City. It did work out. I just think you're going to have kind of this ebb and flow to his whole season. And, hopefully you'll see a little bit more of the flow part of that down the back half.
Yeah, I mean, he's the field stretcher in this offense. That's his role. I thought there was a chance that it could be expanded based on the way that John Morton was talking about him this offseason. And I think a lot of us, our ears kind of perked up when we heard that. Then we see him in training camp, and it looked like his route tree had expanded. And he's talking about how Morton's letting him run more routes and not just the goes and the crossers and the digs. But we haven't really seen a ton of that. And I know a lot of it is matchup dependent. We talked about it at Browns game. They were really trying to get him the ball, but it's one thing here, a pressure here. If Jared had like 0.2 more seconds to get a throw off, that's probably a touchdown. The coverage is strong. Corner drops back, coverage looks a little bit different, and Jared gets confused, throws an interception. Things like that happened a lot in that game against the Chiefs that Justin mentioned. He did get the ball. That was one of his better games of the season, if not the best for him. So it is going to look a little different each week. Has there ever been a star receiver that's complained about not getting the ball? I can't think of one. I don't know if that's ever happened, but he's not really going out and complaining too much. He's saying all the right things. His head's in the game. He's still going out there and blocking and doing all the little things, which to me is a sign of his maturity, his maturation, which we don't really need to talk about anymore. I think he's just a proven dude in this league at this point. But it probably is a little frustrating for him to hear all the talk this offseason and be excited to work with a guy like John Morton, who is a receivers coach by trade, and then to not get the ball as often as he'd like. But I will say it's a long season. There's plenty of time for him to kind of correct things. We see that happen over the course of a season all the time. Like, guys not getting the ball first half, second half, he kind of goes off. But I do think it's going to be a little bit boomer bust just by his skill set and his fit in this offense. And another thing, the Lions are just kind of leaning on their strengths in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those guys they're tied for third in the NFL among skill players in touchdowns, I believe with 7 apiece. Mm-hmm. So they have these bread and butter red zone plays that they go to a lot, and they're working. They're second or third in the league in scoring right now. So you're putting up 30 points a game. I get it. It's, you want the ball, but Jamo's a team guy at the end of the day. He just wants to compete. He wants to play football. He wants to win. So as much as I'm sure he'd like the ball a little bit more, the Lions are winning, and I'm sure he's happy with it.
I don't think any of us have seen a decline in effort, right? Like, I think if there was a decline in effort in any way, we would go, okay, like something's wrong. Like, these questions need to be asked more. But like, think about any time you've ever asked him for his goals. What does he ever say? He wants to bring a Super Bowl here. He wants to win. Like, he always says the right things for, a kid that maybe you expect not to say the right things, or maybe to be a little greedy or a little selfish or a little diva-ish. Like, he's never demonstrated that. So, I just don't want to read into Instagram, but I don't want to do it in general. I don't ever read into Instagram posts, but like, that could be a million freaking things. It really could. And so I'm not going to sit there and try to make something out of nothing when I haven't seen the effort decline. Until that happens, I don't care.
You're just gonna make me do it.
Yeah, Will's got to do it. He's gonna put all the work in Jamo's mouth. Just stepping into that 97-1 mentality. We got to get there.
The other thing I think that's maybe worth pointing out here is John Morton's been pretty clear about having no fear with feeding Amon-Ra St. Brown until you prove that you can stop it. And even if you think you have found ways to stop it, he's like, I'm still going to get you the ball. I'm still going to get him the ball because he's going to find a way to catch it. And if fewer targets for Jamo means a few more for St. Brown, it's like not necessarily the worst thing. I mean, Amon-Ra is having a huge season. And the other thing that maybe is relevant here is, to the point of a couple plays each week changing this conversation, if a questionable OPI isn't called, it looks different in the box score. And if Jared on the 4th down throw to Tesla looks to literally any other receiver, but Jamo in particular for a touchdown, it probably looks different. So he is a boomer bust receiver right now, and I think there's just a little bit of angst that we've seen more bust so far than boom.
I don't envy John Morton at all, by the way, because David Montgomery probably wants the ball a little bit more than he's getting. That's something Dan Campbell talked about last week, wanting to get him the ball more. They fed him in garbage time when they were kind of up a little bit, and that really probably didn't satisfy Monty, if you ask him, I'm sure. But he's got 5 touchdowns, which is tied for 12th in the league, and he wants the ball more. If you scroll down the list, you'll see Brock Wright tied with Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams in touchdowns with 2. So, like, there are a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. Not everyone's going to get it each week, but that's just sort of how it's designed. It's designed this way to kind of pick your poison. And if they're going to Saint and Gibbs and these plays are working and they're scoring 30 points, I don't really see the issue. And it's not going to be an issue until these guys start complaining. And the way the Lions draft these guys, there's a reason they're here. It's because they're not going to complain about it or make a scene. So, we'll see a couple of Instagram posts of what that turns into, but I'm not reading too much into it right now.
Feed your studs. Feed them, right? Like, feed Amon-Ra St. Brown, feed Jahmyr Gibbs. There's no reason not to. Everybody wanted Jahmyr Gibbs to get all these touches last year, not just the fantasy nerds and the gambling nerds. Like, everybody saw, like, Jahmyr Gibbs is the more dynamic running back. Dave Montgomery is very good, but, like, he does not have Jahmyr Gibbs' game-breaking ability, snap to snap to snap to snap. So, like, this is what you wanted, and this is what you want, even if you don't think you want it. But there is something to be said about a little bit more balance throughout the entire offense. Whether that's a little bit of more of a JMO game one week or a little bit more of a Sam Laporta one game every week. But, like, you want consistency from Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs every single week, because they are the elite of the elite in this league.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my next question to you guys, because you can't really fault John Morton for, like you said, feeding your best players. I mean, they're riding the hot hand. So Jahmyr having over 200 yards from scrimmage, it's hard for me on a Tuesday morning to just go on the internet and bitch about how Dave Montgomery didn't get more touches. It's like the guy had 200 all-purpose yards. Like, I mean, and I think for David, he seems, and correct me if I'm wrong here, he seems like he's a good back. He would be a starter on a lot of teams, but he kind of falls to me in some of that category. I call it's kind of like a matchup back, where, like, Jahmyr is in the top tier of running backs where, like, doesn't really matter. He's just always going to play well. It just seems that way. It's like a Saquon Barkley. But it seems like Dave Montgomery, just depending on some of the matchups, like the Buccaneers, he's never really had great games against the Bucs, or another team like the Browns. They've done pretty good. They've done pretty good against backs like Dave Montgomery. It seems like people are maybe overreacting to him just struggling, because you guys reported on it, and everyone saw it at training camp. Like, he looked in great shape. He looked more agile. He looked incredible in training camp. So I don't even think it's kind of like with JMO. It's not like an effort issue or a talent issue. I just think comes down to guys are just, like Dave Montgomery, he would say it himself, it's just not Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, he's going to have some games where he doesn't play well. So yeah, I don't know what your guys' kind of thoughts. I know Colton just kind of shared it a little bit, not too concerned probably with the Montgomery stuff moving forward, or you think he should probably get more involved? Because I feel like Jahmyr's having a year. So you can't blame Johnny Mill for that. I mean, he just balled.
Yeah, it's hard, because I'm sure Monty wants the ball. He said in training camp, "Hey, don't forget about me. I'm still here," right? And they have forgot about him in some ways. But I do think a lot of it is, hey, he's facing these stacked boxes. It's hard for him when he's getting carries. Sometimes it's like late in the game when they're up and they're just trying to round the clock. So the situational football, I think maybe you could probably try to do a better job of working him in earlier, or try to free up the box a little bit more, work the play action game, get him involved. But it is hard, because I think he's a talented player. He's a very talented player. We know what he means to this team, the physicality he runs with. That just energizes the whole sideline. I did a story on this a year ago. When Monty is running the ball well and he's lowering his shoulder and hitting dudes, it amps up that entire team. So, like, that's the impact he can have on his teammates from afar. But on the field, when teams are loading the box against him, it's like when he gets in these games, he's facing these stacked boxes. And the one thing that Jahmyr does well, and he'll face them too, he's a great pass catcher and he can take it to the house. And, like, you have to respect that speed. So, why is it different than last year? It's hard to tell right now. I'm sure we'll get an answer as we watch more football going on here. But, they're going to try to work him in. And I know this game plan, game flow didn't really allow for that. Facing a really good Bucs rushing defense, by the way. Yeah. I want to point that out. There'll be better opportunities for him going forward. And a lot of it is, hey, we played a tough Cleveland team. The Bucs have a good defense. The Packers have a good run defense. So it's like, you played some good teams so far, and I don't think they've really allowed for Monty to get involved as much as he would like to be. So let's be going forward.
I think defenses have dictated Montgomery's involvement far more than offensive game plans have this year. And Jeff, like you mentioned, Demo being in great shape in camp, dude, that dude is going to be in great shape when he's 87 years old. Like he'll still be squatting like 600 pounds at that point. But I feel like, Colton, this is a point that you've been making maybe since week one, but you go back and look at the numbers and how frequently Montgomery is facing boxes of 8+ defenders. And right now he's at 40%, which is the second highest mark in the league. At least he was entering week
number 1 now.
7.
Will,
is he number 1 now? Oh, yeah, so he's number 1 now. And what's notable to me is that it's a significant spike from years past. He faced 25% last year, and I think it was 21% the year before that. And for whatever reason, defenses this year have decided to entirely commit to smothering the rushing attack when Montgomery is on the field. And you go back to that Bengals game, it was clear as all day in that game. And it was Graham Glasgow last week who told me, like, he was blown away at how committed they were to shutting down the run. He was like, dude, they had goal line fronts out there, like in the middle of the field at times. and the Lions did pound away, and eventually they cracked and broke the wall a couple times with Demo in that second half. But the pass catching ability that Gibbs presents and the home run ability forces defenses to be a little bit more conservative in how they defend the run. And he's only facing 8+ man boxes like 22-23% of the time. And I think that has dissuaded the Lions from giving Demo the ball quite as much in clear running situations. And I do watch the game on Monday night, and you almost sympathize with Demo because he gets in there for a few carries, and it feels like every single time he's getting hit behind the line of scrimmage by not 1, but 2 or 3 defenders, and nothing that he could do. And I haven't looked at this, but I do wonder how David's rate of defenders behind the line of scrimmage when he gets the ball compares to Gibbs's rate, because it just feels like anytime he's in there, he's being forced to make 1 or 2 guys miss before he even can think about a positive gain. So defenses have schemed against David differently this year. And I think the adjustment on the Lions' part has just been running the ball more often with Gibbs.
I think you have to look at some level the switch from starter to backup, right? That's taken a lot of snaps away from Montgomery, because not only is he no longer starting halves, but he's frequently not ending halves because now they're in the 2-minute drill. And so I feel like teams can key on him a little bit more, knowing like the Lions just want to get this dude the ball, right? And so he's out there, he's probably going to get the ball because he's only out here in the middle of halves. And so that's probably a factor. Interestingly enough, Will, as you were talking there, I looked up, he's actually averaging more yards before contact this year than last year. So who knows, maybe one run is really swaying that, maybe a 72-yard run. I don't know.
Yeah, a certain run against the Ravens.
Right, maybe. But
yeah.
I'd be really curious how much, and this maybe goes back to the JMO conversation, like they're running less offensive snaps. He's getting less opportunity. And what are the situations of those opportunities, right? And so you say garbage time, they're feeding him garbage time. Sure, whether it's a big lead or a big deficit, teams know you're going to run. That's what you do. You're trying to run out the clock. And so it naturally increases the 8-man boxes. It naturally leads more to these 1, 2, 3-yard runs or no gain runs. And so I think this switch to Gibbs, which I think we all kind of wanted to see as the larger share of the pie, is negatively impacting Montgomery from a game flow perspective more than anything.
Yeah, I think it would behoove them to involve him a little bit more in the pass game and force defenses to respect that element of his skill set, which is real. And you saw it in the Chiefs game. I think in the second half, they opened maybe their second drive with a couple checkdowns to Montgomery, and he broke one for like 25 yards, and he broke the next one for maybe 14 or 15. And his targets are down this year, and almost by like a full target per game. And that might not seem like much, but if he can turn one of those into 20 yards, that's going to affect the overall output over the course of a season. And maybe it also affects the way that the defenses stack boxes against you. So again, like we're talking about all these different things they have to consider during the bye, how to get this guy more involved, how to get that guy more touches. And we should probably also just pause, take a step back and realize that they are third in the league in scoring, right? And I know the yards aren't up there, more like top 8 or top 9, but these are good problems for a great offense to have.
By the way, I just looked it up just to put a bow on this. 59% of Montgomery's rush attempts have come against 8 of our men in the box. That is first in the league. Jameer Gibbs is 20th at 41.3%.
Yeah, we also, by the way, we can't just gloss over the fact that we'll just use behoove. I'm going to write that one down. I'm writing that down. That's a good one. I'm going to write
that. It was a walking thesaurus. I love it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's a great one. So our last 5 minutes of the show, we got our pick of the week presented by Dog and Pony Show Brewing, which, by the way, Kyle took care of me. Got me.
That lager is good. That lager is good now.
It ain't no joke.
Yeah.
I pounded about 4 of these at luckily I wasn't driving. It was amazing. So shout out to Kyle for taking care of me. I got a bunch of merchandise as well. But we're instead of doing our picks of the week because the Lions do not play, Colton actually had a great idea. All right, and I think that we're going to use this one. All right, when you look at this Lions team, they have the bye week. Who's your pick for which Detroit Lions player is going to have? How do we say this? The best bye week. And you can interpret that however you want to interpret that. All right.
It's like a Minnesota boat thing.
Yeah, because there's a lot of personalities on this roster, and I am curious to see who you guys decide. You probably know them better than any fans would. So, who has the most fun in this bye week on this Lions team, fellas? Who do you think? Who needs it?
I'll go with Kelvin Shepard. I'll go with the coach because one, I think he's earned it. I think he's earned some time off. He's done a great job so far this year. His first 7 games as Lions DC. Shep is a big foodie, as we know. Followed him on Instagram. He's always posting plates and meals. So Shep, I think you enjoy to have a nice meal this week, or 3 or 4. Enjoy yourself. You've earned it. I think he's gonna have a good time this weekend.
Go ahead.
Is it hunting season in Iowa? What's Jack Campbell going to be up to?
I like it.
Who's not going to have the best bye week is me. I'm going to work through it because I'm dumb. Man, I'm not prepared to answer this question. I'm going to go with Amik. Amik seems to know how to live it up. I mean, look, he took the podium in sunglasses and a massive chain that's worth more than I make in 5 years. He's really balling right now. He knows probably that he's in a contract year and about to get paid. I think Amik's going to have a good time this weekend.
Little known fact about Amik, he's a sucker for rom-coms. He loves rom-coms. His favorite, this is no joke, his favorite movie is The Notebook. He said he has watched it. He said he has watched it numerous times with his girl, mostly because it teaches him new games. He said at training camp this summer that he just goes home and he watches that with his girl to pick up some new moves. So I think he'll be kicking back with homegirl and watching a few rom-coms this week. And hey, he deserves a moment to rest. I hope, speaking of rest, that John Morton finds a little time to sleep this week. That man doesn't leave the facility during game week until Fridays. He spends every single night until then on the 8-inch memory foam mattress pad that he has on the rollout couch in his office. So hopefully he finds a chance to get away. I'll tell you who's not going to be having any fun, although it will be fun in his mind. Aleem McNeil was like, dude, I'm going right back to the weight room, right back to work. That's one guy who probably wishes they didn't have a bye this week. He'd love to get back out there, but I think that John Morton will also get a chance to decompress, and maybe he'll be able to enjoy himself for a little bit this week.
I'm picturing him hiding in like a cabinet as Campbell's like going office to office, telling guys to go home, and like more just hiding under his desk.
Yeah.
No,
I tried to squeeze in a question about whether he was going to have to kick John Morton out of the building on Monday, but it just didn't fit organically.
Yeah, Johnny Moe, he gives me like he has to drive a Harley. I mean, there's just no way Johnny Moe doesn't own a Harley. He just gives off those type of vibes, man. He just seems like a badass. I'll say for the best bye week, I'm going Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got a birthday Friday.
Nice.
He's got $30 million owed to him this year. Guy's living life. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, happy early birthday, brother. And appreciate all you guys for tuning in, just like you do every single Wednesday. It was a great show today. Comment again, where should and or will, no pun intended, stream from next Wednesday. Okay, that's the cue.
I'll weigh all suggestions.
No wrong answers. No wrong answers.
Yeah. One lucky listener might have Will in their home.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll watch The Notebook afterwards.
There you go. Appreciate y'all. We'll catch you guys next Wednesday. Until then, hit that subscribe button and like button. We'll catch you.
Peace.